Welcome to the 5D Shift podcast with Openhand. It's where we take a higher dimensional perspective at the tremendous planetary shifts that are happening right now from an energetic standpoint to really intuit, feel, sense what's happening in the field around us. It's where we take the real news from and then see how we can work with it at an individual level. And in this episode, I want to look at the activating, bubbling Kundalini of Gaia and how that's likely to impact the planet going forwards, and also how it's coming through us on the plane of emotions and the plane of the intellect.
We've entered a pivotal moment in Earth's history. People in all walks of life are waking up and challenging the 3D shadow system. They're turning away from the fake stream, going inwards and igniting the passion of their soul. We're shifting consciousness into 5D. What does that mean exactly? How and when will it happen? Openhand is a higher dimensional ascended master consciousness, working to illuminate the pathway forwards through the stormy transition. But this is never about telling you the truth. It's about offering essential insights into the shift, tools, meditations, and spiritual practice so you can realize your own truth. Because ascension to 5D is something only you can actualize for yourself. Get involved, explore, inquire, expand, liberate your soul.
So recently in the Openhand work, we've been seeing plenty of synchronicities about the bubbling away, the activation of Gaia's Kundalini. You can see it in the volcanoes coming awake and the earthquakes that are happening around the world, the sinkholes as well. But also, I've been getting synchronicity that there's something not quite right. You'd expect that for the degree of pole shift that we've been witnessing on the planet right now, the magnetic excursion, you'd see a more active, more explosive volcanic action going on around the planet. So something has been suppressing the emergence of that energy, and so that's been pointing towards a kind of dampening effect of the shift, and that a confrontation of that dampening effect is now happening, now taking place. And what I'm referring to specifically is the yearning, the building up of pressure, the desire to release natural Kundalini energy of the planet once more, because it has been suppressed. And that's mirroring into the human process of a bubbling energy or a building energy in the lower density, shall we say, and wanting to express onto the plane of emotions and through the plane of mind. But this has been blocked and suppressed over the aeons. By whom and how? Well, we need to go right back to the beginnings of what we can call the Atlantean epoch, when the Annunaki, back in, let's say, 250,000 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier than that, came to the planet and wished to exploit the resources, create a civilization and enslave species. So they hybridized the original humans and created Homo sapiens. You can clearly see how that's happened in the genetic record, and specifically how it was sealed in place with a chromosome shift from 48 chromosomes in hominids and great apes to 46 in Homo sapiens. That didn't happen by chance. It's not one or even two single-step mutations. It's multiple to get those chromosomes to join. It's sealed in place, a dehybridizing effect for Homo sapiens. But that wasn't the only thing they did. They also made tremendous changes to the planetary configuration and specifically the magnetic field. We must understand their tremendous energetic architects. They've traveled from Sirius through various different constellations, exploiting the energy of different star systems in order to fulfill and carry out their agenda, which is essentially increased power, control, wealth, if you like. That's what they've been trying to do. And I should add at this point that the Annunaki are shifting in consciousness. So as not to judge or demonize, the collective is fragmenting, has fragmented. One group is ascending to help and support the various shifts going on the planet, whilst another is still kind of locked down and hunkered down to the old agenda of trying to exert absolute control. So we should say there's a fragmentation going on. That's a very positive sign, so as not to demonize and castigate. But what exactly have they done? Well, the Earth's torus has been slowed down, and that's been facilitated or caused by the imposition of megaliths such as the pyramids, the Great Pyramids, for example, but not just those. I mean, for example, in South Africa, you can see 1 million stone circles and other megaliths around the planet that principally are to do with the intervention, the hybridization, but also slowing down the Earth's torus. What does this do? What it means is that when you get a cyclical pole shift happening, a magnetic excursion, then the mantle, the crust, doesn't detach from the mantle. You have a thermodynamic layer between the two, and the surface, the crust, binds to the mantle. And so when you get a pole shift, the crust doesn't necessarily detach from the mantle, and that has caused a tremendous cleansing or great purification, as the Hopi have termed it. And so the Anunnaki have tried to mitigate the effects of the pole shift so that it wouldn't be so devastating, so that they could reconstitute life here on the planet. And so what you've seen is a slowing down of the Earth's torus through the period, the epoch of Atlantis. And when the huge deluge did come with this cyclical process, it didn't completely obliterate their civilization. They were able to regenerate it. And what we have now, what we see now in society, is the latest iterations of that intervention, which is becoming highly sophisticated, where the megaliths were originally used to interfere with, to slow the torus down and extract energy from it. Now they're using EMF technology through the mobile phone grid, through the satellite belt around the Earth, which has been greatly augmented in recent times, last few years. It's all used to affect the magnetic field of the planet, and, well, not just that, but it mitigates the effects of this grand galactic convergence we're sailing into. I believe they thought that they could use technology to shield the effects from the grand galactic convergence. What is that? Just to spell it out briefly, we're moving through a high energy segment of the galaxy right now. That's the time of the grand solar minimum, where the magnetic shield of the solar system is lowered, and as we're moving toward the culmination of the Earth pole shift. So what you get is, you get a galactic trigger which fires a solar micronova, which then finally triggers the pole shift. And when that's complete, I mean fully complete, then you get a tremendous cleansing of the Earth in the lower 3D aspect, and that is meant to, or helps to, strip away this cancerous intervention which goes right back before the Anunnaki to primordial times, when even draconian in the form of reptilian DNA found its way to the planet. Wow. Yes, so we're working with these grand cycles of re-emergence, of realignment, of liberation from that intervention. And a great cleansing needs to come. Let's be clear about it. It's not something that's necessarily that palatable to a 3D mind. But we are not 3D beings. We have been incarcerated to some degree within the 3D container. We are not 3D beings. Original humans were multidimensional. And so there's nothing to fear with a great cleansing. We're all going to pass on. We're all going to die at some point in the physical. It's what happens after that that's crucial, that's the key. And it's about forging, integrating soul and ascending into 5, 6, 7D. That is the natural realigning, cleansing trajectory for the planet Earth right now. And the invitation for humanity to move with it. So let's break through, let's work with any fear of this grand galactic convergence which we're sailing into. Work to break it down and to ride that infusing energy to uplift the soul, to integrate the soul, and let the natural Kundalini rise and carry us in this ascensionary, evolutionary process. That's what we need to be engaged within. And so the reacceleration, the regeneration of the Earth's torus is fundamental in that process, so that you don't get this kind of lockdown, but also that explosive possibility with the Earth. So the Earth's torus is being accelerated right now. You have draconians coming in to regenerate that and accelerate it, and that's going to interrupt that intervention effect. It's going to negate that intervention effect, and so you're going to see this rising, bubbling Kundalini of the Earth. And that's going to express out onto the volcanoes. But let's look at, for a moment, how this speaks into the human journey. Well, because the Kundalini of the Earth has been locked down, and because the consciousness of humanity has been misdirected onto the plane of mind, for example, then what you've got is you've got the soul being disconnected, distracted, derailed from its natural expression and flow, from its natural multidimensional connection. This has been done through distractive, for example, social media practices, using AI that take your web search processing, your web searches, and feed back to you what the ego is wanting, needing, and getting that 3-second dopamine hit by being completely consumed within that. This is orchestrated, it's engineered, it's meant to mimic natural divine synchronicity, but basically what it does is it depletes, de-energizes, strips the juice of life away over time. So the intervention is purposefully directed consciousness, human consciousness, into this growing metaverse. It's also done so on the plane of emotions by attaching us to judgment, attaching us to neediness in community, in relationship. And so what's happened is relationships haven't been allowed naturally to grow, evolve, transform. And so you get a lot of toxic emotions, toxic relationships building and anchoring. And so these two effects have been stopping, thwarting the natural emergence of original human consciousness and the shift into the 5D human, what I'm calling Divinicus. And you've had various groups that have been responsible for that. So the Annunaki, for example, have created the tall white synthetic beings, very mathematical. They're able to strategize, create processes, mental processes, and keep re-engineering those, keep developing new iterations to keep humanity locked onto the mental plane. We've been conditioned to judge others and project judgment. And again, that keeps the energy channeling through the plane of mind. Let's be clear, discernment is a really useful, valuable tool on the shift. You know, a rose is still a rose and a thorn is still a thorn. And knowing the difference between that, one and the other, in how you live your life, in relationships with others and in society, discernment is absolutely crucial. But where this becomes condemnation, where you're judging the other, where you're locking them into a belief system, an idea about how they are, actually is very limiting for you, because it builds a rigid landscape of you as an identity in relation to those judgments. And that's what the intervention wants to do. It wants to lock you into that landscape. And with the earth, slow down. And so you've got this very cancerous reality that we're living in. It's full of inertia, lockdown blockages, and a kind of acquiescence to the life that they're projecting upon us, the metaverse that they want to suck people into. I don't believe that's going to succeed. I believe there's enough pushback. I believe there's enough opening going on that is going to challenge that and break it down, unravel it. And I think we're seeing signs of that all around the place. I think, most recently, we're seeing it within the financial system. They're trying to introduce central bank digital currencies, but there's a lot of pushback against those now, fortunately, particularly in the USA, where they're trying to destabilize the banking system so as to direct people into central bank digital currencies. But there's tremendous pushback going on against that right now, which is a very, very positive sign. And of course, that is on the plane of the intellect, the plane of mind. And so you're seeing a challenge and opening up, a penetration, at least we can say, on into and against that level of intervention. And so recently, on a Divinicus retreat that we undertook, we had some tremendous reflections of all of these different processes going on, both at a planetary level, but also in a very physical, human, primal way. Yeah, the retreat builds up to a divine, a sacred ceremony, a sweat lodge, First Nations style sweat lodge, that was handed down to Openhand by Spirit. And our work, our retreat, culminates to that. And in the sweat lodge, it was a very intense process, I have to say, tremendously evolutionary, but very, very intense. We were experiencing, blockages on the plane of emotions that wanted to open up and express. We were experiencing closed mind loops that were causing self-judgment, condemnation, these kinds of things that come up, that activate. But the energy was really strong and was helping us break through those. Okay, it's an intense process, but that can often be the case with Rising Kundalini. Fortunately, we came out of it in very positive, very uplifted, very enlightened feeling and sense, very liberated. But it was an intense process. And at the end of the lodge, it delivered, as I was clearing it out, it delivered the final stone that had been brought in, which I didn't see clearly in the darkness, looked just like a prehistoric dinosaur or dragon's egg. And I thought, wow, it's red in color. We've been seeing a lot of red dragon energy. And I knew I was supposed to conduct ceremony with it. I knew it was speaking into not only our process, but the wider earth process. Nearby, up in the mountains of Snowdon, a tremendous sacred mountain on the British Isles, is a site that is known and steeped in Merlin mysticism and ceremony and magic and ancient Druid energy too. There's a site, there's a hill which is a plug to a volcanic release that happened probably millions of years ago. So you have this volcanic crater much higher up and this plug lower down. And it seemed to me, we picked it up definitely during the retreat, that site had been used for dark magic to not, it was blocking the benevolence, shall we say. So the energy is coming down through the valley and then being harnessed and used and misdirected using ceremony, using intention, using dark magic to apply energy in a particular direction and way. And it felt like this was symbolic of the greater earth process, the torus being slowed down and the energy being misdirected to control. And so it felt like we could use that location to speak into the wider planetary shift. And so I was given to take this dragon egg, this red dragon egg, up to this site, whereupon I found synchronistically this huge stone that looked very much like a pelvis. And the idea was to break the egg in the pelvis or on the edge of the pelvis and symbolize then to speak into the release of energy, the release of Kundalini energy by the earth to get the torus re-accelerating and to break out the intervention to stimulate the rising Kundalini of humanity. Now let's be clear, when you conduct ceremony, it's not saying that, I, as some kind of ego, am triggering that. That's not what this was about. It was more the animation of a feeling backed by synchronicity that was now wanting to happen at a planetary level and at a human level, speaking into that, creating a feedback loop with the earth to give energy to it and so to support that shift and express a support for it. And that's what I felt like we were doing. I broke the egg on the edge of the pelvis, and a lot of synchronicities spoke after that. Rising dragon energy in the sky, you saw, strongly red sunsets with shapes like the dragon afterwards. A lot of symbology speaking about that. And so it felt like a very poignant moment. It felt like a very poignant ceremony. And the key thing, what do we expect that could happen following this shift, following this movement? What are we likely to see? And then also, how can we work with it at a human level? Well, I believe you're already seeing an acceleration of the Earth's torus. I've spoken about the draconian energy coming in to facilitate that, to break down this retarding intervention that's been happening. I believe the torus will increase, and that means that the layer between the crust and the mantle will become more fluid again. And so you're going to see a triggering of more volcanoes, a stronger release of that energy, which was symbolized as the red dragon energy. And we can equate that to representing Earth's Kundalini, rising Kundalini. I believe you're going to see a stronger release of that energy in the months, years ahead. It's going to express out onto the plane of water and into the sky, into the plane of mind, we can say. So I think you're going to start to see that happening more strongly around the planet in the years ahead. And I think this is a very positive, good sign. We don't want it to get stagnant. We don't want it to get explosive either. So I think you're going to be seeing that happening in the years ahead. What about at the human level? Well, this is fundamental. This is so powerful for the human evolutionary process. As I've explained, I feel like humanity is being retarded on the plane of mind through social media, through the inculcation, the encouragement of judgment and projection at different groups, at different aspects and elements of society. I believe people are being encouraged and locked into that. Also to restrict our freedom and movement by building rigid and then toxic relationships. The feeling that you can't move, you can't evolve, you can't express in your own authentic way because of family around you that perhaps have been pulled into the synthetic agenda, the metaverse, or the bogus pandemic that have been pulled into that, or friends or colleagues at work, for example, who encourage these very restrictive, matrix-like behaviorisms, and that somehow that our freedom is bound into those constructs. And so that's been, I would say, inculcated at an emotional level and a mental level. And as I said in the Sweat Lodge, I believe both of these dynamics were coming up and being reflected very strongly. So how can we work with this? Well, we need to be activating the Kundalini rising up from the base. We need to encourage it to rise. We need to direct it onto the plane of emotions to express emotionally. It's not about retarding or blocking that, but being passionate in your expression and letting it go and being honest and authentic in your expression. That doesn't involve judgment. It doesn't have to be projecting your reality onto another person, but it's the strong emotive expression. It can be through art, it can be through music, it can be through, deep consciousness, bodywork, yoga, kickboxing, this kind of thing. It can be an emotional, strong expression, martial arts or Tai Chi, but a strong form of that. So I think expressing onto those planes is going to be really important. And then setting boundaries, so being on the emotional plane, so being really clear, this is me, this is who I am. I have no shame or no concerns about being myself and animating, expressing that. You either take it or you leave it. If you don't like it, well, go somewhere else. That's completely okay. And so establishing those boundaries in a firm, emotional, passionate expression is going to be really important. And then also as the energy rises onto the plane of mind, well, breaking open, for example, self-judgment, self-limitation, self-doubt, and also these judgments about other people. Yes, let's make the discernments, but they're not condemnation, meaning that you predict or lock those people somehow in your own consciousness into a way of doing and being that locks you into that landscape and limits you too. So making the discernment but breaking open the loop that then makes it a condemnation. So it's bringing the energy up, expressing, animating also onto plane of mind, but staying centered in the core of you, staying connected to the base so that you don't get pulled onto the plane of mind, so that you're not just acting from that place and then being triggered or being manipulated to stay in that layer of consciousness. So by bringing the energy up through these different practices I've mentioned, through strong breath work, you can break open and release those patterns and express clearly, accurately through the plane of emotions and the plane of mind. And this is what is really important to be working on right now, so that you facilitate this natural rising of Kundalini. It's then going to meet Kundalini descending, the two connecting, and then you've got liberated soul acting through your life. And this we can call full-blown Kundalini activation. That's what we need to be working on right now. And that's the facilitation that's happening at a planetary level by the benevolence that are unleashing Gaia's Taurus. And by the way, that's being reflected, I would say strongly, in the very first crop circle that's appeared in the UK crop circle season near to Avebury, which clearly demonstrates a Taurus, like a propeller almost. And if you look at the shape of the blades, you see there's an anti-clockwise ascending spin that's depicted in that. But it's quite steady right now. I expect that as we go through the crop circle season, you may well see what's depicted as an increasing speed of that rotation. We shall see. Who knows what will come? And with the activation of Kundalini in mind, I'd like to guide a meditation that helps the rising of Kundalini up through the body, through the head, but particularly on the plane of emotions and the plane of mind, to expand through, to infuse through, to liberate energy, soul energy onto those planes. This can only be an introduction to that kind of meditation. If it resonates with you, come and get involved with the Openhand work, because we do meditation like this through all of the events to facilitate the integration of soul and our ascension into the new paradigm. So let's begin with inhale, exhale, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, just to accentuate the sense of release of energy from the core of you. Inhale, exhale, like dragon's breath. And with the tension in the back of the throat, helps open, expand the throat chakra. Inhaling up from the base, out through the third eye. So you're feeling the rise of energy through the core of you. Nice and strong. Now let's stimulate it in the base by inhaling on the base of the spine, exhaling through the lower physical. And you can arch the spine and the pelvis so as to animate the pelvic region. So you get that rhythmic feeling movement with the breath. Feeling the pelvis. Feeling the strength in the pelvis. Nice and strong. Animating that dragon's breath. And now onto the plane of emotions, the sacrum. Inhale on the spine, exhale through the sacrum. Nice and strong. The sense of passion, expression, strength. And now into the solar plexus. On the spine, out through the solar plexus. Breathing onto the plane of the intellect. Breaking open, a sense of breaking open those limiting loops. Self-judgment, self-doubt, judgment, condemnation of others. Breaking open, breaking those loops apart. If you have quartz crystal can animate the feeling of clarity through the plane of the intellect. This one's a rose quartz. Feel that clarity activating on the plane of intellect. And now up through the chest, through the neck, through the head, onto the third eye, or through the third eye, opening out through the third eye, increasing, intensifying the sense of clarity. Make sure you stay connected to the base. Let the Kundalini rise all the way through the body, out through the third eye. Are you staying connected in the core? Nice and strong, clarity, freedom, sense of liberation. Now inhale up, exhale down, centering, clarifying, connecting, connected. Here, clear, anchored, strong, centered, passionate. This is how rising red dragon Kundalini energy can help us clarify, can help us liberate, help us purify, help elevate consciousness both at an individual level and at a planetary level. That's what's being encouraged right now. I encourage you all to work with it. Come and get involved also with the open hand work going forward, because it's definitely what we're going to be working with. That rising Kundalini energy to break the intervention and unleash us, to clarify, to purify, unleash us into the new paradigm. I look forward to seeing you and greatly support, encourage your evolutionary process. Namaste. Been inspired? Then get involved with the revolutionary work of Open Hand. Join us on seminars and retreats, online and terrestrial, for groundbreaking meditations, illuminating self-realizations, and plenty of fun. It's all supporting the great planetary shift to 5D consciousness. Join kindred spirits today. Visit openhandweb.org.